Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Game Vortex. I'm Vitale, and today I want to have a little bit of a different episode for you. I actually want to have an episode that I am having sort of like a one-way conversation, asking you about the things in general. And as soon as I ask you this question, you'll probably know where this thing is going. So my question here is, what games defined you as a gamer? What games did you grow up with in general? Because that's something that is quite close to me, and I wanted to talk about this topic for a while because a lot of people care about the games right now, but kind of forgetting what games we actually grew up with. I mean, my first console that the parents bought me was the NES, and then the SNES, and then the Mega Drive or the Sega Genesis. Also been a very big PC gamer. Actually, most of my life was probably on the PC compared to the consoles. So I want to ask you, what games did you grow up with? What games do you remember the most from when you were younger? And how do you feel about those games not being around, for example, right now? I'll tell you a little bit of my story right now. Not sure how that's gonna go, but I mean, I was born in 1985 and I started gaming from early 90s, I'd say. I mean, I've tried ZX Spectrum when it was there, the Atari games at my friend's place because it was too expensive, and also the Neo Geo, which was a fucking ridiculously expensive if you wanted to have it in your house. So I just spent a gazillion amount of money playing in the arcades, Double Dragon and, you know, all those other games. That was amazing experience at that time, of course. But what defined me as a gamer? Let's get back to the PC gaming right now, because a lot of people probably think that I don't talk much about the PC gaming. So obviously Doom, the original Doom, was a big inspiration to me. That was one of the first games that I ever played. Was great. Also, I've played the Need for Speed 2 second edition. I don't know if any one of you had those CD-ROMs with the Need for Speed 2 second edition that had not only the game but also the showcases for the cars that they had. I will remember being very, very intrigued and inspired and amazed by the McLaren F1 at that time and the Ford prototype that they had in the game. I remember entering the cheat codes, you know, like Pioneer for extra speed and so on and so forth. So this is very, very, very close to my heart, obviously. Coming back to the PC gaming, one of the most interesting developments is that I got into the real-time strategies a lot. I absolutely adored that genre. I could spend days and weeks playing. Like, I'll make myself a cup of tea after having breakfast and I would just sit down and play pretty much half of the day. I would play the Dune, the original Dune, tried Dune 2000, later on StarCraft, and obviously the masterpiece of a genre, Command & Conquer, all of the series. Basically, I've played all of the games that they released, and Westwood has been one of the most beloved developers that I've ever experienced playing their games, and I still can't forgive the Electronic Arts for buying this company out and just absolutely making a fucking mess out of it, because it was really, really, really bad decision on their part, and they tried to restart it. They've made a flipping mess out of that game. Really, really bad mess out of that game. I've played obviously the Command & Conquer, you know, the James Coogan, the actor who played the Kane. He actually had the direction of the videos and everything by himself in the first couple of games when it was still Westwood. But after that, obviously, when Electronic Arts stepped in, they dissolved the whole fucking thing, and then years later we get something when the aliens invading and stuff like that, and it just wasn't the same. They experimented and they failed miserably. Same thing goes with the Burnout series. Where is the Burnout? I mean, the Burnout Paradise was an amazing game. Where is the Criterion right now, and what are they doing? Where is the Burnout? We need another Burnout. The game that has defined me as a gamer, and the game that I utmost have the respect for, is the Quake II arena. I played that game religiously. You won't believe how much I played that game. I don't know how old I was at that time, but it came to the point that I was competing in the national tournaments for that game. I was like in the city where I used to live, we were living in Eastern Europe basically at that time, and we were one of the first countries to get an amazing internet. And most of all, because our city was only about 40,000 people, a lot of there was two main companies that were doing the internet. What they've done, instead of just connecting you to the internet, they actually linked all the computers that people were actually getting into the network, into the LAN, a local area network. We had Quake II and CounterStrike servers running, Quake III servers running at that time. The Quake II was just a force to be reckoned with at that time. I was so flipping good with in team deathmatch or just deathmatch and capture the flag, railguns, everything, you name it. I was really, really good at that time. I was writing my own config files. If you are a gamer from the 90s, you'll understand what I'm talking about. I was writing the config files, binding the keys to specific moves like double jump, double rocket jump, single rocket jump, and so on and so forth. It was just insane at that time. Not only did I did that, actually, if you played Quake at some point, you know that you can make a pack files basically. Pack was the main file, and then you could add some things, like you could change the sounds, you can change the textures and things like that. I've done that. I've done mods myself as well. I remember most of the console commands at that time, like the gravity commands and other things, you know. It was just an amazing experience that defined me as a gamer. That's when I was the best at the first-person shooters. Then it came to the CounterStrike era, and I was playing that just as much as I played Quake, obviously not going way too deep into writing my configs, just in the basic stuff, but I was pretty good at it as well. So I enjoyed those games. These are the main two games that actually affected me as a gamer, and I remember it to this day. And once in a while I still go back to play Quake 2 by myself or with the bots. Sometimes I'll play CounterStrike. Now of course there's a CounterStrike also on the Steam. So yeah, those games are something to admire. And after that, obviously, what came after that is the simulation games. Like before that was a Transport Tycoon Deluxe, where you had to build it's like a Sim City, but I wouldn't really call it a Sim City. You just control the connections. You're building the bus stations to the cities and the seaport and basically airports and train stations and everything. Like you had to link. I mean, I could play that like one game for weeks on end, because it would never end pretty much. I mean, it would at the end, but still. And that was one of those things that I absolutely admired. And also something like Roller Coaster Tycoon, Hospital. If you remember the theme hospital thing, where you had to build your own hospital, you hire a specialist, and people would come up with different symptoms. Some of them would have like a balloon head, where you had to pop them and just put a hose into their mouth and just pump them back up. If you work out your doctors too much, they would go insane. Like they would refuse to work, they would screw up, and so on and so forth. And then obviously when I came to the consoles, the PS1, I played a lot of games. Like there was Bushido Blade was one of my favorite games. Not many people know about this. Basically, the Bushido Blade was one of those simulations where you get one hit kill basically, and you had to go through these arenas that are basically stages. Tekken was a big thing for me. Street Fighter back in the day. Final Fantasy, that's when I got into RPGs. Final Fantasy 7, I believe it was the first one that I actually played from the series. Never finished it, surprisingly, because it was on 4 discs and my console broke later on. I couldn't finish it. I started it off again on PC, the PC port of it, and I played pretty well, and eventually I just forgot about it because there was too many things to play at that time. You know, like too many things to play at that time. And Siphon Filter, of course, is one of those games that I enjoyed a lot. There was this game with the blue creature. Bloody Roar, of course, was pretty good. Tomba. Star Ocean, I've tried a little bit, didn't really get into that stuff. Valkyria Profile, enjoyed that a lot. Need for Speed, of course, that came up later on. And in general, like Tenchu was great, then they pretty screwed up later on. The genre became quite stale. when I move on to the consoles later on, I mean, that's already not in the past, that's just recently. I mean, PS3 has seen an amazing library as well. I remember playing a lot of games. To be honest, like, I can't even remember most of them. Heavy Rain was a pretty nice game, very unusual. Uncharted series was great. Metal Gear, obviously. There's many games that defined me as who I am right now. Right now I'm 31 years old, and obviously things have changed. Like, I hate first-person shooters now because, I don't know, like, it just seemed too repetitive to me. I would go, especially those competitive first-person shooters, because you're playing to be better, but at the same time you're not progressing in terms of like actually completing something. You're doing the thing over and over and over and over again. So obviously I cannot miss this, but I'm talking about Blizzard games. Diablo was a flipping amazing game. I don't know why, but because we had this huge LAN network, and Diablo 2 didn't really have any kind of protection from piracy and anything you could play in any country. Like, I remember doing those ball runs and stuff like that, where people would you create a new character and they'll just drag you through if you're your friend, they'll drag you through the whole game. Especially in Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction edition, you basically go with your friend and he drags you through all the stages of the game 3 times over, because there's 3 difficulty levels. Also through hell, and then after that there was an exploit where you go to a secret cow level, and that thing just boosts you up to level 70 pretty easily within a couple of hours, and then you're on your own. Then you're a pretty comparable fighter. And Diablo 3 is not an exception. I mean, a lot of you think that probably I didn't sink that too many hours into it. Well, I have it here on my computer still. I haven't played it for over a year, but if I look at my characters, I have a necromancer, I have here a paladin, I have the wizard, the girl, and I have another character here, the barbarian and something. And looking at the time, I've sank about 200 hours into every single character. 200 hours, that's like 4 of them, that makes almost 800 hours. I mean, they all maxed out to their levels, but there's a few, like, I still need to do the Paragon levels, but I'm not going back. I mean, it's just too much stuff on my plate right now. I have 2 kids. One of them is only 2.5 months old. Another one is 4 years, 4.5. And this is something I don't really have time for. And for people who complain about lack of space exploration games, I mean, I still have on my computer an Eve Online installed. It took me a very long time to get into that game, because that game is so massive, it's so complicated. It's been going on for over 10 years. The amount of content and the complexity and the deepness of that game is just insane. You can do anything, or you can be anyone in that game that you want. It obviously wouldn't work on consoles, and not in terms of the power, but in terms of the interface, because even for a PC the interface is a bit confusing. Things are very difficult to understand. You need to read a lot. Like, there's so much into that game, to be honest. Like, it's overwhelming. I've been playing EVE Online for about 2-3 years, and a lot of time it became so overwhelming that I just stopped paying for it and just let it sit. What is good about that game is obviously because your account and everything you own, even if you don't pay, just deactivates, but you can still come back to it whenever you want. So if you feel like a space game, play EVE Online, because even the simplest thing as mining asteroids in that game, it's just the soundtracks mixed with the graphics, with the amazing vistas that you see there, is just so calming and so amazing. Like, I would spend like, I don't know, 6-7 hours a day just mining shit, you know, or leaving it in the background in a hope that I won't get blown up at some point. So these are the games in general. I just give you a quick overview, because if I had to talk about every single one of them, you would have been here for an hour or 2 or 3 or a whole day, to be honest. Now, I really want to know you, my audience in general, like, what kind of games inspired you? What kind of games you grew up playing with? What kind of games do you remember from your childhood the most? And most importantly, there's 2 more questions. What kind of games do you miss the most right now? Like, maybe there's something like EA that fucked up your favorite franchise. Like, there's so many games that I want to see right now, because with the proliferation of first-person shooters, that everybody in the US, which is the biggest market on the planet for games, aiming to produce more and more first-person shooters. I miss the Sims, like not the Sims where you control the people, but like Transporter Con Deluxe and maybe Roller Coaster Tycoon and things like that. The simulations for things like SimCity was one of those last hurrahs, you know, and there's another game called Cities for that. But it doesn't really scratch the itch. I'm also craving for first-person strategy. Like, there hasn't been much since then, and I'm really disappointing for that. We have such a oversaturated shooter market right now that everything else gets buried or it just doesn't come out, and this is very disappointing for me, to be honest. So yeah, this is everything I wanted to say to you right now. I mean, I'm recording this while my daughter is still sleeping and she's rolling around because I didn't want to carry my computer downstairs into the recording room. So yeah, thank you very much for listening to this episode of Game Vortex. I hope you found this to be entertaining at some point, and sometimes I just want to have a discussion. So yeah, don't forget to subscribe if you like this channel. I really appreciate all your comments, all your likes, all your subscriptions and everything like that, because I'm not here for the money or anything like that. I'm just doing this as a hobby. I mean, I have a full-time job, 2 kids, and a cat right now that I just took off the streets, so there's a lot on my plate. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, listening, whatever way you actually consuming this video, and I'll see you all in the next episode of Game Vortex.